Okay. And if you want to come up in, yeah, you can have a seat.
I don't think you're going to see the cat fights. For any of you that watched last night, that was pretty ugly, I thought. I don't like all the interruptions and the nasty barbs back and forth. And I talked early on about making sure that, we want to run a positive campaign. And so we've agreed to do that and have been doing that, and glad to see it. So I think the thing to do is talk a little bit about background, a little bit about qualifications, a little bit about what I've seen in Redmond, and then where I think we're going and some of the future that we have in mind. So interestingly enough, if any of you looked on my Facebook page and saw the press release, my family moved to Central Oregon in 1873. I'm fifth generation Central Oregonian, born here, spent some early years in Redmond. My dad went back in the service, so then we moved all over, but Redmond's always been our home. And then my career also took me out of Redmond. I did go to school here, went to COCC, and then graduated from Oregon State. But then when I retired, honestly, there's no place like home. I mean, it's always been home. I've always had an affinity for Redmond. Our annual vacations were always back here. And so, over the many years that we were away, we were always back visiting, and uncles and aunts and so forth. And so I decided that when I retired, because my wife obviously was involved in that decision, we decided to move back to Redmond. And I immediately got involved. I had done civic work on the East Coast and also up in Seattle, and I had a real affinity for wanting to do civic kinds of activities. So Alan Unger, who was our mayor at the time, put me on the planning commission, and then I ended up as a city councilor and finally as mayor. So I'm now in my 8th year as mayor. I've really enjoyed the experience. I like being mayor. I think that we have a very good group, very collaborative group, the council, the staff, the citizens. We all work together. I don't know how many of you know this, but there are over 100 volunteers, citizens that support our community, be it the Arts Commission, Planning Commission, DURAC, Downtown Urban Renewal, and so forth. Lots of committees and commissions, and thank you to all of those who do volunteer their service to our community, and it does make it a better place to live. As far as qualifications, I'm involved in a lot of different things, obviously. Been on a lot of different committees and commissions here in town, and then also across the area. I've been the chair of Central Oregon Cities Organization several times. I am on the League of Oregon Cities Board. I've been their past president. Given I win the election, I will be the president of the Oregon Mayors Association next year. And those groups are important because if you're involved in those groups at the board level or at the executive commission level, you have a lot of influence on what goes on. And the things that we can influence in the state affect Redmond. I'm on another very well unknown committee called the Local Officials Advisory Committee, and if any of you've heard, we were able to expedite getting 900 acres out here. We're going to be able to annex that and turn it into industrial land, and some of that is because of that committee's work that I am on still. So I think state level is very important. Relationships are very important. If you look at those that have served us at the state level and the national level, Greg Walden, Gene Wisnett, Senator Canope, they've all endorsed me for mayor. The council's endorsed me, except Ann. I didn't ask her. I had the good grace not to ask Ann. The county commissioners have all endorsed me. Several of the local business folks here in town. In terms of businesses in town, during my tenure, and don't get me wrong, I'm not taking credit for all of them, but we have Nosler, we have Baysex, We have Consumer Cellular. Medline, used to be Medisys, decided to stay in Redmond. Central Oregon Truck, many of you know Rick Williams, they consolidated their operations in Redmond. And a lot of that is just due to the nature of Redmond and how we serve our businesses and the folks that we treat and treat them very well. Bob Nosler, probably one of the ones that made me feel the best, was Bob Nosler when we met to talk about Nosler moving their operation to Redmond. It was really important. They asked me to be there, and apparently it was very important to them because Bob told me later that it was due in no small measure to my involvement in telling our staff, you know, make it happen. Get us to yes on this one. This is important. And Bob has actually announced on multiple occasions that he eventually plans on moving his entire operation from Bend to Redmond. So we'll have probably the premier bullet maker in the world here in Redmond in a few years. As far as the future, you know, we have a lot going on. We're about to finish up Evergreen. During the Centennial, we did in Centennial Park. We bought the land between those two, and so that's going to be converted into Centennial Plaza. In the near future, I mentioned the flag monument and all of the beautification we need to do along 97. All of that's underway. We continue to attract other businesses when we sell the property where our city hall is now. That's supposed to turn into an entertainment venue, which will be great to attract people to downtown. And then I'm sure all of you are aware of the work that we continue to do downtown and improve it and attract businesses. We were able to accomplish a lot even in the recession. You know, we rebuilt 5th and 6th Street as part of that whole downtown effort. And I think downtown's a lot nicer than it was when I became mayor. And of course the reroute gave us the opportunity to redo that, and I'd be remiss if I didn't do a shout out to Alan Unger and the work he did before me to make some of that happen. So I think with that I will stop, and Ann's probably sitting over there going, I've stolen so much of her thunder, she's going to hit me in a minute. So I'll let her go.
Thank you. So I want to echo George's comments that we obviously like each other, and we have similar, we've discussed, perspectives on the community. We always vote the same in council, and I don't think anything I'm going to say that I might do a little different is a matter of degree or focus. Both of us are well aware of the growth management plans, I call them, our comprehensive plan, our urban renewal plan, the many, many documents our citizens have created about what we should do as we grow into the future of Redmond. And the role of staff, councilors, and mayor is to look for the opportunities to implement those things the citizens said they want to see. And of course, that is what you have seen happen over the history of Redmond. And when people say, why are you running against George? I always like to say, I'm not running against him, I'm running at the same time. And I think there's a difference there that makes a difference. I have no animosity or issues with the way George runs the city. It would be foolish to say that. I just want to get out there and let people know that I similarly love Redmond, and I hope to be the mayor. And I'll be very honest and say at the middle term of a councilor's 4-year term, you have a safety net. If you're not elected, you're still a councilor. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm running at this time. And I'm pragmatic about my chances, so I hope just to be known as someone who really genuinely cares about the community. I like to give a little background. I've lived here a little over 6 years, 6.5 years, retired from the Hillsborough area in a long career in technology manufacturing companies. And I like to add that I grew up in Medford in the 50s and 60s, and luckily Frank grew up at the same time and went to high school with my older sister, and that's how come we eventually got to meet, and thank goodness. But I grew up with small town Oregon values, and as George says, this feels like home, and it felt like home immediately. So I passed out a cheat sheet for you to kind of give you some background on me, some other things, some of the things I've done. Thanks to George, I was appointed to the Planning Commission where I served 3 years, Urban Renewal where I served 2 years, Budget where I served 2 years, and I volunteered for many other things, the Community Block Grant Development Task Force that created the strategy for implementing the HUD money we have to do something about affordable housing. And the Nuisance Appeal Board, if you, we cut down your weeds and you didn't like that, you came to the Nuisance Appeal Board. And that was actually quite fun. And I also stuffed candy into Easter eggs every year, and I plant flowers on 6th Street in the springtime. And Frank and I are actually the only citizen volunteers we see at those kind of events, which is interesting, says something about the engagement of the community. And it's observations like that that led me to create a Facebook page, Facebook and Graham for Redmond, where for 3.5, 4 years now I've been trying to share the interesting things that are going on at the city and turn the agendas and the results of our council meetings into English. And a lot of people have told me they appreciate that. So, because not a lot of people actually show up at those meetings, but I think it's important to do that level of communication. So there's a couple other things I want to say that we'll just probably preload you for questions. The areas where I want to change the focus, one of them is related to my background. And since I've come here, I've been looking for the opportunities. I've been using it to contribute to Redmond, but I think in the mayor's role, I can do a lot more. And it's not a slight on anybody in the city, particularly George, to say that my background is unique. I've spent 35 years in technology manufacturing companies, designing, building, operating, and site selecting for those kind of factories. I served on the board of READY, looking for the engagement that would allow me to improve our recruiting of jobs from that sector, which is often called the new century jobs industry, and usually higher technology, potentially higher pay, usually higher pay, and higher career satisfaction for our citizens. But it's apparent to me that the mayor's role will let me do as much as I want to do. Frequently, when a company comes here, they have non-disclosure agreements. I used to use them when I did site selection, and they don't let very many people in the room. Sometimes even I'm aware the mayor isn't permitted. But I intend to go push. There's a lot of reasons why we don't see these kind of companies. I intend to go push on Business Oregon, where I have been a site selector before, and try to change the filters they use to decide who gets to see what. I brought a small solar company here. It's the first time I ever saw Redmond, and it would have worked at the time, except for the lack of power. But Business Oregon didn't want me to come here, and so I'm going to go. That's one of the commitments I'm going to work on. The other area I have a concern is the rate at which housing is getting built in our community. It's, of course, everybody understands we're a bedroom community to Bend, but the difference is really getting big. And the new homes that are getting built right at that same difference. We saw from our city staff that over the last year, we've had a nice upsurge in residential building, the average of which is $250,000. That's the same number that is Central Oregon Association of Realtors. The latest statistics says the average home sells for in Redmond. But that same number in Bend is 410,000. And I'm concerned that we need to do something with staff focusing on code ways to try to prevent us from that becoming the primary thing that gets built here. I think it would make us out of balance. I think it would lower our property tax potential to fund city operations out in the future. And I think it has potential to create less than great neighborhoods. And I was quite impressed by the great neighborhood principles when I first started on budget. City council through staff directed us very early to work on code to prevent the unaesthetic neighborhoods that had gotten built in the last uptick. And we worked hard at it, and that impressed me, and I view this as a continuation of that request. I think it's time. I think it's a long-term issue for us and something we need to address now. And I've been trying to raise the priority of this for about a year, and I have gotten some support, I will say, but some of the key parts of it are still quite a ways away, and there's a lot of master plans out there waiting to come in this uptick. And so this is the second area that I have a strong concern about. And with that, I'm done, and I'll open it back to Eric. Where's Eric?
Questions from the floor?
So, as a citizen here paying taxes in the community to support the city, the schools and things, sometimes I hear about a new company being courted and brought to town, and one of the things you see in the announcement is the huge tax break that company has received to get them to come to town. And I say to myself, but who's gonna pay for the schools and the streets? And so help me understand how that's good for the community to give my peer these sweetheart deals.
Okay. May I go first?
Sure.
Thank you. So there's a couple answers to that. First one is, everybody does it. You will not be successful in the competition without a very lucrative incentive package, first. But second, the incentives make sense because the company coming here pays taxes on certain other kinds of their business. They provide jobs. They help uplift the economy through people using our businesses and provide all kinds of secondary business opportunities come usually with companies like that. And so they bring over a longer term much more than we give is the general belief.
You're talking mainly about what we call enterprise zones. And what that has to do with, Ann has alluded to some of it, in order to qualify for those, you have to be paying about 1.5 times the average wage here. So to qualify for those. So some of what Ann's saying about the increase in income tax and so forth helps offset those property tax breaks they get. The other thing, those are for a limited amount of time. It's either 3 years or 5 years. There are extraordinary circumstances. Prineville's granted a couple to those big data centers at 15 years. I don't think we've ever done one that big. Ours are 3 to 5 years. For the larger companies that are paying high wages. The other thing Ann alluded to is that, you know, those have multiplier effects. If you're paying a living wage, you're paying someone $60,000 a year, they can afford to go to the doctor, they can afford to have a lawyer, they can afford to have a CPA do their taxes and so forth. So there are multiplier effects that go along with those. And of course, income tax is a source of school funding. I think all of you know that we do not run the schools. There is an independently elected school board. Our influence kind of stops at the door with them if they want to build new schools, something like that. We don't operate the schools. We don't really influence all of that, except to say that when we attract those companies here, then the income tax derived goes into the state coffers, which in turn are returned to us to pay for schools.
Thank you.
I'm a snowbirder and I'm only here half the year, but I was pleasantly surprised with all the new art I found aside our streets when I came back today.
Well, we have a couple of interesting programs. You're probably referring to this kind of traveling art. What we do is we will do contracts with artists for 2 years. And then in the course of that, sometimes we end up buying art or they donate it. There's kind of a mix that goes on in there. And so there is a lot of new art downtown right now. I particularly like that heart that's down at American Legion Park. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Ann can speak to that too, since she's the art commission liaison, art committee.
And there's a side benefit to that, of course. We do it because we love our community. And it also demonstrates to, say, a site selector or a company wanting to come into the community that this is a community that cares about itself. And it says something about the cultural values of a community. And it's an influential part, actually, of recruiting business and people to, just in general, to come and live in our community. So it has a lot of benefit and it's a lot of fun.
I have a cold. Alicia's going to be kind enough to bring me some water.
Mike,
Dick? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you controlling?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dick.
at one time you spoke of redoing the Redmond Hotel,
Yeah.
and is that still in the works, or?
Well, of course, the city staff is exploring every opportunity to try to get that hotel developed. It's been vacant as long as I've lived here, and a few years before that, I know. Yes, but there've been some issues with the ownership of it. It's made it a little more difficult, and so, you know, as far as I know, it's underway. Certainly everybody would love to see it developed. It would be a catalyst business, especially if developed as a boutique hotel, which is what the Urban Renewal District says is its best use. It would be as a boutique hotel. If it brings, you know, it's 47 rooms, I think, in it. If it brings even 50% occupancy on average, that's 20 couples every night walking out on 6th Street, 5th Street, 7th. And I think it would be a sea change in the kind of business and the economic strength of our downtown when we finally do move it. And of course, it's something that all of us are trying to push. George?
What she said. Just one other side note. We've actually gotten close on about 3 different occasions. I mean, real close. And like one case, there was a medical emergency and they had to back out, stuff like that. So it's just unfortunate. And one of the owners is a little bit difficult to deal with. But other than that, we have gotten very close 3 different times. Very frustrating.
Along with the other questions have been answered, there's a ballot measure that's on, 96, I believe it is. I don't-
97.
State ballot measure, but the news or the things that are talking about it is going to affect the amount of development that you will have in the community because the tax rate goes up. How do you think that might affect, one way or the other, affect the industry that you're talking about, building and bringing in and giving tax breaks and all that kind of stuff, to that situation of the fact that, will it influence bringing these companies in? Will it influence the people that are here? Can you address that a little bit?
Happy to. I think the answer is a definite yes, and I think you're talking about measure 97.
97
is the number, yeah. Site selectors view Oregon as somewhat of a business unfriendly state already because of our business tax levels overall. And this measure will certainly dry up even more the number of requests for, helping companies relocate that the state sees. I'm definitely sure of that. I think there are a couple of businesses in Redmond that will have personal impacts from that, but I don't think it's going to be such that they would leave Redmond or anything like that. I think it will certainly slow down the entire state's ability to grow businesses like I was describing. So I hope all of you will vote no on 97 personally.
Yeah, in fact, I've been asked to do a resolution, so our next council meeting, we're going to have a resolution on that, to vote no. The Chamber's asked us to take that on, so.
Very good, thank you.
I talked to our city recorder this morning about putting that on for a discussion at our next council meeting. In terms of impacts, when a grocery store has about a 1.5% profit margin, all right, Safeway. So you're gonna tax them at 2.5%, what's that tell you? Cost of food's going up, right? I mean, what choice do they have?
George, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the key is it's sales, not profit.
Yes, I know, but what I'm saying is when their profit margin is 1.5 and the tax is gonna be 2.5 on gross sales, their profit is 1.5% of sales, and the tax is gonna be 2.5% of sales. So, that tells you the prices are gonna have to go up. The other thing is the multiplier effect. We talked about it last week. I was at the League of Oregon Cities Conference, and that was a very big discussion item. And they were talking in particular about food, and there's a couple of commercials, farmers, but basically what they're saying is the big agribusinesses, and we have a few in Oregon, over 25 million annual sales, there will be a 2.5% tax on that guy, the seller, and then, or the grower, excuse me, then he sells to a wholesaler, a big wholesaler, which is also 2.5, or 25 million, he gets hit with 2.5, and then finally the retailer. So you're talking not 2.5 now on the corn, you're talking 7.5% on the corn. So, that's one of those little hidden things in there that it does have a multiplier effect as well. So it is not a good deal. The other thing, we were told that Oregon goes from like number 31 in the nation to number 50 for taxing businesses.
How are they able to make the false claim in all of the promotion for 97 that we have one of the lowest in the nation when it's absolutely patently untrue?
That's politics.
Yeah.
There must be some weird caveat where one small,
What did Mark Twain say? There's liars, damn liars, and statistics.
So the
If I-
distinction is corporate and business tax.
yeah,
If
so
I
they're
could
able to
follow
say
up
under
this-
that small.
So you're basically using business taxes, or corporate taxes, the rationale for this.
And
as
not
opposed to
including business tax in the argument by the, and therefore saying that.
Right.
I'd like to follow up something in that question. The kind of businesses that I discussed that I came from and that I want to use my background to try to recruit would be small businesses and might not be as, they're startups mostly in nanotechnology, biotechnology, second and third tier providers to solar, things like that. I'm not suggesting that the Intels of the world, like I used to work for, would come here. But these smaller companies could come here still and be, you know, have enough people in our community, have enough skill sets in our community. And this is this I think means that their measure 97 impact would be less. And I want to add that I mentioned New Century Industry. I forgot to say this at the opening comments, but it isn't just me that thinks that's good for Redmond. You know, in 2009, there was a Redmond Development Commission appointed by the mayor. Some of you may have been on it. And that commission spent a couple years interviewing people, including me, and organizations, and doing research, and came out with recommendations for goals for the future of Redmond, which the council adopted. And their primary suggestion was to recruit jobs from New Century Industries, exactly what I'm describing and what I would like to follow up. And they used a goal, an aggressive goal number of 10,000 jobs from that area by 2030. And while we have done an excellent job recruiting recently through READY and the mayor's efforts and everyone in the community, we're not actually getting jobs in that kind of manufacturing industry. You know, ammunition and food products and the push rods and those kind of things are great to bring to Redmond. I'd like to try to bring these higher technology companies here as well.
A couple of comments on that. Yeah, I was talking to John Stark from READY just the other day, and since 2008, we actually have 1,600 manufacturing jobs that have come to Redmond. And that's those higher wage jobs that we were talking about. I know Ann's talking about a niche industry, but you know, in terms of living wage jobs, we are doing pretty well in Redmond. My fear, of course, is long-term and impacts, because even though these guys might be a small startup, someday they want to be at 25 million, I would think. And so, you know, there's also that piece. Another thing that we're quite worried about and don't quite know what to do about is the cost of building here in Redmond, in particular for the industrial side of the world. It costs more to build an industrial building than they can lease it for. And our wages are higher for construction workers than they are in Portland. A lot of that's because of the recession several years ago, and we've never come back up. Our unemployment rate in 2010 for construction workers was 38%. So what they do, they left. They either left the area or left the industry, retrained and so forth. So now, if you want a drywaller, I had a friend that told me he actually had people come on his site to try and recruit the drywallers away from his job and gonna offer them more money just to walk off and go somewhere else. So, you know, we've got those kinds of issues. There's not much we can do about it as a government other than just continue to try and offer those incentives that we talked about a minute ago to make it a little more attractive for them to come here. One other thing that we don't have is an interstate. We all are well aware of that. We've been pushing that a lot. Our prior city manager did a study, so that's been several years ago. But Central Oregon was one of the largest population areas in the United States without an interstate. 200,000 people and no interstate. So that has also hurt us. Obviously for Redmond, though, and a real attraction is the airport. There's an awful lot of companies right over here that rely on the airport to move their product. And so and we also have aircraft industries over there, Mountain Air and so forth, that, and build aircraft. And the reason they're here is because of that airport. So that's a huge plus for Redmond.
Yeah, and Mayor's right, that's one of the reasons we don't, the first filter, frequently the site selection will say within 20 miles of an interstate or 10 miles of an interstate, and we're way beyond that, obviously. But I think with the failure of the port in Portland and the advent of Central Oregon truck and all the truck traffic you see on 97, Frank and I always take 97 to go south because it's just as fast as 5, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a case to be made, and that's the kind of thing that I want to go push on. And I know that the solar company I brought here in 2009, I think it was, would have worked. We could have shipped, you know, the product they make is not that dense. It can be shipped out by air, it can go on trucks and reach its intended destinations very easily from here. And so that's the kind of thing I want to push on.
I just had a question. So I do feel like there's been some great efforts and successes in terms of bringing some bigger manufacturing jobs and some growth, some job growth here in Redmond. I'm kind of wondering too, and we touched on the Redmond Hotel, but the downtown area and how you see that developing. I mean, I see business fronts still boarded up. You know, I'm like, where's our bakery and where's our independent baker in Redmond? And I know we have a Bliss if they're still here, but it's just kind of more like, how do you see the downtown? How do you see us promoting individuals getting opening businesses and continuing to develop downtown Redmond to be an attractable place, like we have already with Oktoberfest and events and closing down the street for different festivals and bringing wild ride success.
Which people complain about.
Build off that.
Well, a few of them, it's kind of interesting. You mentioned Wild Ride. We actually made some concessions to that company. Basically, I talked to the owner and said, if you'll put in a storefront, we'll cut you some slack on how you do your water and sewer. And the owner then, several months later, come up to me and said, thank you for making me put in a storefront. And you all know it's wildly popular, no pun intended. And it is. I mean, Oktoberfest, it was crazy. And a couple of weeks before, they had the bike jumpers, whatever that's called. And, hundreds of people. It's great. And I'd like to see more of that. But you're right. I mean, on 6th Street, there are boarded up buildings. Unfortunately, there's not a lot, but they're very visible. And, I mean, we can't force somebody to come in here that doesn't want to come. And you all know, I think, all of you that are business people, certainly in the retail side, that about 90% don't make it. So, we've seen a lot of that over the years too. And the recession really hit downtown. We've seen a lot come back. They ebb and flow. And other than offer the attractive things that we've done and the improvements we've made and the bump outs and my arch and all that stuff, to make it a real attractive downtown. My arch, yeah, you bet. Right, Joe?
It's Joe Centani's park.
Joe's park, my arch. Okay.
And I get a sewer line.
Yeah. All right. Whatever works. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I've noticed the same thing, and I put it on the sheet. I have a couple thoughts on that. One is I was out at the Expo Center doing a welcoming to one of the many events that come there, and I picked up their advertising literature, and there was no Redmond business on it. There was tons of Bend business and Eagle Crest. So Eagle Crest is outside of Redmond as far as I'm concerned. But
They support the fire district.
yeah, so that says to me there's an opportunity there for us to engage closer with all the amazing things that happen out at the fairgrounds. That's one, and pointedly bring people downtown. You mentioned the hotel. Obviously, if the hotel develops, that's going to be a big catalyst and be a big help. The other thing that I've been pushing for some time, and the city is working on, part of the urban renewal plan, is to bring some new housing downtown. We're in the process, I think it may be done, of acquiring almost a city block for this. And I'm trying to take the position that we need to make it higher quality housing. You know, we've done Cook Crossing recently for income limited people, and we obviously have affordable housing problems, and we are working on those and all that. But I think one of the keys to downtown will be to bring disposable income into walking distance of downtown. And I've been promoting this for a long time, saying Frank and I will move downtown if something gets built that's nice enough. You know, we live on Majestic Ridge because of the quality of the homes that are built up there, and so does George. And you know, what's unfortunately around our downtown is the oldest area of the city, the smallest homes, the oldest homes, and there's not things down there that we'd like to live in. But I know a lot of people in Eagle Crest who've told me, if you build something that is, you know, that we would like to live in, as we get older, because most of them are retired, we'd like to live close to the hospital and close to Red Martini or Diego's or Rick. We can walk both ways.
In that order?
In that order. Well, I like Red Martini, what can I say?
I know.
So those are a couple ideas I have that I would, you know, personally as the mayor sets the agenda for most of the discussion that happens at council, and as you've heard, guides staff application of resources. Those are another couple things I would do to try to address what you just brought up.
It is about 5 after.
Oh,
So yeah, it kind of slipped by me. So maybe we'll just close with that. I feel like everybody got their major questions asked, and perhaps if you have some additional questions, the candidates will stay late to talk with you.
Yep,
If
you
not,
bet.
thank you for coming.
Uh-oh,
I just
go
got a
wash
cold.
your hands. Don't touch anything.
Well, we had to get the handshake.
I brought lawn signs. Anybody that wants one, you're welcome to it.
Don't